intersection of expert-based capping and AI-generated projections in this fast-growing world of sports betting. I'm Steve Shellman, and this is Brian Reinhart. We'll be taking you through all the NFL slate this week using a combination of AI and expert capper opinion to make winning picks. Brian's a world-renowned poker player, has been capping games well since before the beginning of online sports gambling. I've spent the majority of my career using quantitative models to explain and predict human behavior. My team has been building models for the Defense Department for about 15 years. We repurposed all of our technology recently, and we turned it on the sports world to forecast game outcomes and player stats. Now, all those insights are brought right to your phone, packaged in an application that we call Prop Juice. We're just getting started in terms of what we got planned. This podcast is going to discuss the various betting angles from both a human expert and AI data-driven perspective, and we hopefully are going to make more informed picks regarding spreads, money lines, totals, and our best human machine-generated prop picks. Brian's going to talk about key issues affecting teams and players and how that impacts lines and angles, and I'll show you what the models are saying about the latest game and player projections. What do you think, Brian? You ready to get going?
I'm ready, man. NFL's back. Let's do this.
All right. From the Cave, Man vs. Machine is sponsored by Prop Juice, AI worth the squeeze. Prop Juice is a full suite AI sports picks app delivering data-driven game picks and prop bets right to your mobile phone and favorite web browser. Prop Juice can sync all your bets across all your favorite sports books like Caesars, FanDuel, MGM. It can recommend the top dog of the day and break down all the models for each week's game action all season long. Sign up at propjuice.ai. Get a free 14-day trial this week. Lock in beta test pricing. You get the insider access to an all-new AI data-driven app before anyone else. Sign up at propjuice.ai. Prop Juice is AI worth the squeeze. So before we discuss the actions, let's introduce ourselves and provide some background on how we got here. Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started playing poker and all about your degenerate sports betting days?
All right. So I was for 20 years, I was a cash game player. I was still in the corporate world, so I couldn't dedicate full time to it, but I enjoyed the game of poker. Online was big in the US, and I was crushing that for quite a few years. And then really through a vanity of seeing a lot of my friends go into the poker tournament world, they're appearing on TV and that, I kind of got the tournament bug and went out and started chasing that a little bit. And then finally I decided to leave my corporate job and go chase full time. So I went and played tournaments for about 10 years, pretty much all over the world. Still continue to play cash games because that's, generally where my income was coming from to keep me going when I left my full-time job.
So you did nothing else for 10 years but play poker internationally.
That's it. Poker and literally no other gambling other than sports. The one thing I learned, I had a lot of really good poker friends that I just watched degen away millions of dollars in the pits after, winning big tournaments and this and that. So the one thing I said was, you got to be extremely disciplined, which has helped me with the sports betting side of it since going to it. And you got to have great bankroll management. And those were the two key kind of components that I took from poker and to be able to have success.
Discipline and bankroll management. I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot about that in terms of sports betting.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, how would you think about bankroll management in sports betting, just from a general perspective?
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter if you're a $5 bettor or a $5,000 bettor. Every game should not change your bankroll. I mean, that's kind of the way I explain it to my clients. Most of them understand, they've been doing it for a long time. Some of two of my guys are two of the biggest bettors there are in Las Vegas. So I could pretty easily say that. But anyway, it's about making sure that, the parlays are fun, but I tell all my clients, you got to bet every single game I give you straight. Cause that's if you're winning at 3 out of 4 or 2 out of 3, you're making money still, but when you hit the parlays and you stack them with a bunch of other parlays, you can have some really, you can have some huge swings. But the biggest part
I think that's what gets people into trouble, though, right, Brian? I mean, I think that a lot of times we get excited about a $10 parlay hitting for I don't know, a couple $100 or $100 parlay hitting for a couple $1,000, and that starts to get people out of their discipline mode.
Exactly, and that you really have to play the same. And jumping up in stakes, that has to come with the same percentage of bankroll that you started with. So if you take a mythical $1,000, you shouldn't be playing anything more than $20 parlays, on a percentage basis, because that's about where your bankroll is, to make sure that you can get over it. You're going to have swings, like sports is very much like the variance in poker. You're going to have swings where you might go a few weeks, losing money, but you can't let that affect your future bets, because you're going to have those weeks that come up that you're going to need that same amount of bankroll to, or maybe a little bit more, to hammer those games. And you don't want to have to go be jumping back into your own money and refinancing your bankroll. I mean, eventually most people go broke. They're going to have to, and that's starting over, but you can't, the biggest negative I see with people that bet sports, and I drill this home to some of the newer clients that I picked up that started doing this, is just don't go nuts. Don't start chasing bad money. You got to be disciplined enough to, when you're down, you should be betting less. And the opposite is actually the truth. When people are down because they are like, oh, I want to get that money back, so they start
They
betting
want
a
to
ton.
chase.
Yeah, they start betting a ton more. And what happens is
I've been there, Brian. I've
Yeah.
chased Sunday Night Football.
We all have. I mean, like, I would love to tell you that I learned this when I was 17, 18, and 19 years old and first started betting sports, because I went broke 1.5 million times because I just liked the action, But as I got older, I'm going to be 60 here. So I've been doing this a long time. And the one thing I learned was, especially when I was playing professional poker, is bankroll management is the difference between going broke or not. I mean, 90% of the poker world is being staked by somebody. They're buying pieces of each other, and you can't do that really in sports betting. So you got to be able to, really control and have perfect bankroll management on your own. And it's the hardest thing to do. I mean, people ask me, like, you've been doing this for a long time, winning and losing. What's the number one tip you would give someone starting out? And it's bankroll management. It always comes down to it. You got to make sure you're in the game. So if you're not in the game, then you're not going to make any money. So that's basically the story. Steve, how'd you get started in this crazy business?
Brian, I took a little bit of a roller coaster ride to get here. Not really a sports gambler most of my life, really more of a recent thing. But I've got a lot of data science in my background. I grew up a huge sports fan. I played just about every sport you could play in a yard or on a court. We were always looking for some empty, basketball goal or soccer goal or something to play something. Unfortunately, me and my kind of athletic ability was not going to be parlayed into playing sports. But really, always, dreamed about playing sports. Always wanted to fly like MJ, throw like Elway, and kick like Pele.
Yeah, we all come to that realization at some point, right?
Yeah,
I played sports from the time I could walk, and then sometimes you just got to say, "Hey, man, there's not a lot of spots for 5'11" white guys, in the NBA."
No, there's not. Well, yeah, white men can't jump was a very good wake up call. So anyway, I don't know. In my youth, I played a lot of sports, but I was also into a lot of music. I always wanted to be a rock and roll drummer. I played my first paid gig in the 6th grade. Somebody actually might recognize the music to our intro on this podcast from my band. So that's awesome. That's an original song. So we played for a long time, and eventually that's what I really wanted to do. I wanted somebody to kind of discover me playing drums, but that never happened. And at some point, I was in college, and somebody came into a class and started talking about study abroad programs, and I got really interested in maybe being able to go study abroad. And so one summer, I spent the summer in Italy, and it really kind of woke me up to international travel. As you can imagine, you're an international traveler playing poker all these years, and I really got interested in other countries and cultures. And so I came back, and I started to kind of plan to apply to PhD programs in political science. So that's what I did. Ended up going to Florida State, and I got to my advisor, and my advisor was really into quantitative work. So how do we test hypotheses with data? And data was really important. And we needed data to be able to understand political violence and when terrorism might occur, and when people might resort to terrorist tactics and things like this. I was into studying political violence, terrorism, and escalation and de-escalation of conflict and cooperation processes. And so as I started to think about it, I was like, oh, it's just like a football game, man. you got an offense, you got a defense, and an offense is, they're going to either pass or run on first down. And then there's a conditional probability for that second down, right? It depends on what the outcome was for the first play and the percentage of run pass that they play and whether or not it was successful. And all these kinds of things go into that. And so I started talking to my advisor about this. I said, what I really need is I need sequential play-by-play data for political violence so that I can understand the sequences of like how dissidents and governments go back and forth at each other and how we get to escalation and de-escalation. I mean, they play in front of an audience, they're constantly choosing different tactics from a strategy. And so I really got into like the football analogy. It eventually became the theory of my dissertation and it won an award. So, football got into political violence. I ended up doing a career in political violence. I wrote a bunch of grants and got some money and started building data sets, and eventually the U.S. government got involved in my data set. So at one point they called me and asked me to work on a program. So I started a company and I've been doing DoD consulting for the last 15 years. So we've been building systems for classified clients within the Department of Defense, where we build automated data pipelines and we forecast a lot of interesting things. I mean, we do a lot of work with intelligence analysis and how do we cue intel analysts to what we should be looking at more in depth. And so I thought, hey, why don't we turn this whole system on sports and let's see what we can do in terms of being able to predict and forecast who's going to win and these player outcomes.
And you had a lot of success with this last year. I think
we did. We did. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, that was kind of the thing that kind of brought us together, for everyone that doesn't quite, we'll get that as we go along and learn a little bit more about ourselves. But, like the casinos have been using AI modeling, for quite a few years, actually, with, forming the odds lines. I mean, there was kind of one guy that, kind of set the Vegas odds and everyone kind of branched from that. But, AI is becoming more and more and more. And eventually, I think with little human interaction, it's basically going to get to the point where that's basically the way the lines get set. So that was the interesting part for me, because I was like, listen, I'm an old school research handicapper, angle player. I look at a lot of, data outside of, what most key handicappers look at. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to be a success at this is you got to find angles that, if you're going along with the public, you're going to get punished. That's just the way it is. And I think having this combination of the human aspect of handicapping, football games, and then all of your AI modeling, it's just like, I just think together, it just puts together an incredible a line to kind of function together and come up with outcomes. And
that's what we're going to do right here. Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do right here in this podcast, right, Brian? We plan this to be a discussion around various games and props, from the AI to the expert capper, where we align, where they disagree, right? Each week, he's going to do his research, right? He's going to do his research completely blind of the AI, right? And then I'm going to bring the AI and together we're going to go through these games on this podcast, and we're going to see where we agree and where we disagree. So I think it's going to be a real fun time each week, just to see where the computer and Brian kind of agree on things, where we disagree, maybe where we can get some, where we can use our insights, where we might not know what to do, but between the two of us, we'll get to a pick because we have these different angles. So that's the game. That's the idea.
Exactly.
From the Cave, Man versus Machine is sponsored by Prop Juice, squeezing profits out of every wager. It's AI worth the squeeze. Sign up at propjuice.ai. Get 25% off your first monthly platinum level subscription when you sign up now. In addition, we have another sponsor that we're excited about this year. You might see these tickers running in the background, or some of these odds boards back here. Brian's got one, or Brian's going to have one behind him shortly. We're going to do a segment where we look at all the prices across the games from some of the games that we picked to see if we can't find the best book where you might want to place your bet. We're going to use Skybox Sports Network. Get your dream sports ticker at Skybox Sports Network. It displays all your favorite team logos, keeps up to date with all the news 24/7, and displays real-time odds on your odds boards. Show off your ticker in your man cave or your local sports bar. Don't miss breaking news or changing odds. Use Prop Juice at checkout for 10% off at Skybox Sports Network, available on Amazon and on their website. So, Brian, I think we should dive right into the action. Thursday night, we got a big one. It's an NFC East matchup between the Eagles and the Cowboys. The line's 7.5. Man,
It's
I
crazy.
don't know about that line. So
Yeah,
we're all shocked by the Micah Parsons trade. Why don't you talk about a little bit about Micah Parsons' departure, what we think could happen with the Cowboys, where the Eagles are, and let's get into this game.
I think, that certainly had an effect on the line. I was thinking that, the beginning when the lines got posted, we might catch some 6.5, looking across all the boards. I mean, that's one thing I love about the Skybox tickers is, being able to see the different odds at different casinos because it's huge. I mean, in college on Saturday, I found 4 different money line odds on Florida State that I was, I absolutely loved. And, to see the difference in,
You crushed that, by the way, didn't you?
Yeah, I did crush it. But to see those odds swing like that, and especially as you get closer to game time, you got to really take a look. Now that the line went to 7.5, I think it's a scary game. I think there's as far as the trade itself. Let's just cover that for a second. Micah Parsons is a beast rusher, not the great against the run, and I think that was kind of what Dallas was looking like. But I think there was a lot behind the scenes. I heard Jerry's press conference, and I was like, yeah, okay, I think he's trying to save face. For the Green Bay Packers, it's huge. Having him lining up on the other side of Rashad Gary, that defense is going to be scary. Opening up with the Lions week 1, we're going to get to see it. It might take them a little bit to get into their defensive scheming. It's a lot different than what he's coming from.
I think that line too changed, Brian. Didn't it change for Green Bay? I think it went a half point.
It did. It moved to half a point, which I kind of was leaning Green Bay. I kind of like Green Bay. I'm still not set to make a pick and a suggestion on that game yet because I want to see how things work out kind of early in this week. But I think that defense is going to be one to reckon with this year. It was a great trade for Green Bay. I don't think Jerry got what he thinks. I mean, he got 2 first rounders, but the second one is like 30 something. So, it's basically a second round pick. So I think, Green Bay came out on top of that. And I think in a big way, actually, we're going to see, a little bit more, as we get into the season. But Philly,
I don't think Micah Parsons is really going to help against this Philly rushing attack, right? I mean, Hurts and Saquon Barkley in the background. I mean, I don't think he's really doing much there. So I don't know how much of an impact it really has on this game. What do you think?
I agree. Saquon was a beast last year. Running backs in the NFL, there's a reason, 3-4 years you kind of see it. And then he was so good last year and he's still relatively young. So, but he was so good last year. It's like, is he going to have that let up? Those are some of the angles that I look at that most people are like, they go until the wheels fall off, and I try to catch the curve before the wheels fall off. So I'm a little worried about also their offensive line. The one thing about Philly is they got a tremendous defense. They had the top defense in the league last year. I love Vic Fangio. I always been a big fan. I think he puts together some key pieces. So Philly is going to be. They won the Super Bowl last year, and everyone's expecting him to go back this year.
They lost some key pieces on defense, though. You don't agree? I know you like Vic Fangio, but they lost a couple guys in that secondary that Dak can take advantage of this weekend with CeeDee Lamb on the outside. No,
they did. But you gotta have faith in Dak to do it, and I don't. I was one of those guys when Dallas parted with all that money. I was like, I think this is a huge mistake. He was coming off a big injury as well. I don't think he's ever been as mobile as he was prior to that. I didn't like him coming out of college. Even everyone told me I was crazy, but I just thought he was a good NFL quarterback, but not an elite quarterback. And I said, I think I posted on Twitter years and years ago when he first came out. I go, Dallas will never win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott as a quarterback. Now, saying that, I think they got some great receivers. But I think even with the loss of Darius Slay, I still think, the guys that they're bringing up with Philadelphia and the way the defensive scheme works from Fangio, I think they're really going to lock down. They're going to lock them down. So even though the line went to 7.5, I'm still leaning on Philly. Luckily I got some in at 7. I like to get in on the lines when I think they're juicy early. But I still think at 7.5, I'm going to lean Philadelphia.
So you're taking Philly at 7.5.
The biggest thing for me is I love Cooper DeJean. I just think he's a lockdown nickel. I think he can cover anyone. The biggest angle that I looked at this year was the pickup of Pickens coming in and playing opposite of Lamb. But their depth, those guys are also a little bit fragile. So the depth though of the receiving core is light, for Dallas. And I think, the corners and the safeties they have at Philadelphia are good enough to be able to, if you can key in on just two and don't have to worry about an extra slot guy. I think that's going to work out to your advantage. So, still being a Philly fan, even at 7.5, I mean, it's a little scary. It's, on my 5-star, 1 to 5 star selections, I made it a 3. I loved it as a 4 at 7, but being at 7.5, and with the defense that I think Philly's going to put on the field and kind of the thinness, I guess, of the receivers, outside of Pickens and Lamb. What are the models showing us? Like, how can we meld that together with kind of my research with what you're running on the AI models?
So first of all, I think we agreed that the Eagles are going to win. I mean, we have a money line probability of over 75%. All our models, every model we've run, which has underlying models underneath it, which we'll get into throughout the year as we go through, what the AI is doing and what it's predicting. But we have over 400 models running, and they kind of cascade into each other and flow into each other, and eventually we get to some consensus picks here. So we're showing 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 5 models here. All 5 models are showing that the Eagles are going to win this game. So the consensus money line pick is Eagles. There's really no mystery in that, especially with the departure of Michael Parsons. But when you get to the spreads, it's kind of interesting. We're showing a pretty heavy Philly dominance here. We got spreads going all the way to 12, 13 points. One of our most accurate models, the blitz points is over 9 points. And then let's see what else we got here. We got DriveCast. It's also well over 8 points in terms of the spread. The only model that's showing that the Cowboys covers our power rank, and that's really based on ELO scores. So those are you familiar with chess? It's kind of a way to think about power rankings of players. Nate Silver kind of took the chess ELO rankings and converted them over to football, and people have been kind of doing different things with them ever since. We use them as well in our modeling efforts, and that's the only model that's showing the Cowboys cover this spread. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
I think it's super interesting. And I think pushing the lines, I mean, I think this is one of those games that if Dallas struggles early, could get out of control very quickly. If you got to depend on Dak to throw those guys, although they're very capable and they can go for big plays, to be forced into that and having, Vic Fangio kind of be able to concentrate on like, okay, they're down 7, they're down 10, they're down 14, and I can kind of, move my guys back and kind of play some extra cover D. Dak struggles in that situation. And so I think, like I'm going to take a bunch of push squeeze spread lines, up to 13.5 on varying amounts. I mean, nothing crazy, but I'm gonna lean on this game more.
9.5. You're going to take 9.5 touchdown field goal?
Yeah, I think 9.5, 10, 13, and a little bit at 13.5, and
Wow.
hopefully that gets a little crazy.
So do you think his passing prop goes over because he's throwing so much in the fourth quarter, or how would you play his passing prop?
Yeah, I mean Dak Prescott 245, 247, somewhere in there. I think he's going to struggle a little bit. I mean, the biggest angle I'm looking for is Pickens. Is he the Pickens that we saw early in his Pittsburgh career? Is he going to be, an aging, slightly slower? Having him and CC on the line is great, but there's no depth behind that. And I think the corners, for Philadelphia are really good. Even with losing Slay, I think Slay towards the end of the year, you saw a lot more penalties from him because I think he slows down as the season goes. He gets beat up a little bit. He's had some injuries. He's not as young as he used to be. So them losing him, yeah, I'm sure they wanted to sign him, but they got some really good young guys coming up, in their secondary. Quinion Mitchell, I think he's, a solid young guy. He's going to start at corner. And I love Cooper DeJean. I think he's, one of the best nickels. And maybe they even move him into safety in Fangio's, if they get up early on a team. So I think,
Okay.
and I love Makuba. So I would take the under on Dak.
We agree. The AI agrees. We have like a 70% probability, I believe, that Dak goes under 250, under 247. I
Interesting.
think his line right now is 247 on Sunday as we record this. So that bodes well. We both agree on that. Let's think about the Philly dynamic. So we've heard all last season, the whole drama between Hurts and AJ Brown and whether or not they get along and whether or not they can coexist with Saquon Barkley in the backfield and that running game. So where do you see the passing game and the rushing game? Particularly, let's talk about two props. Let's talk about AJ Brown's receiving prop, and then let's talk about Saquon Barkley's rushing prop.
Yeah. So actually, all week long, I've been looking at AJ Brown. I really kind of liked this situation with the secondary. I mean, Trayvon Diggs is maybe one of the top corners there is in the NFL, but AJ Brown is big, he's strong, and the way their receiving core is set up, he's going to get freed up a lot. If Hurts can get him the ball like I think he can. Anyway, I ended up going over 71 and a half. I kind of really got excited about this last night because I was kind of like him and Han, wasn't sure if I even wanted to include him. And then the more I dug into it and the more I looked at the secondary, um, you know, Malik Hooker is probably going to start at free safety for Dallas. So I think in looking at the different dynamics of the way the game's going to be played. I mean, Philly features Saquon Barkley. We all know that. And so the receivers, how many targets is he going to get? 6, 7, 8. But he also is strong, with his yards after the catch. And having depending on the offensive scheme, that they end up getting out there. I think AJ Brown could have a breakout game.
So
You
what
know,
you just said though, you just said that he's going to get 6 to 8 targets. So that means you're going to say he's going to get average 10 yards a catch.
because I think he's going to have one for 30 or 40, and that kind
Okay.
of makes up where he has those little slot catches, over the middle catches. But yeah, I literally was I know we talked about it a little bit early in the week, and after doing everything last night, I was like, you know what? If I'm going to use him, I'm going to take the over because I think he's going to have a standout game. I mean, I just hope for him. The big thing with AJ Brown is his health. Does he stay healthy? Does he have any issues? And if he stays healthy, I think he's going to have a big year. And,
How does
and,
that
and
bode
so,
for Saquon's game then? If he's going to go over and have, 80, 90, 100 yards, what does that do to the rushing attack?
right. And I think Dallas's defensive line is still going to be strong. I mean, against the run last year was the reason I think kind of the Micah Parsons things happened. But because he's a pass rusher. I mean, he wants he wants numbers. I mean, I hate to say that he takes a lot of plays off. And so I think they could be a little bit better in their run defense this year, compared to what they were last year. Um, but for Saquon at 97 yards, like if Philadelphia gets up early, like I'm planning, then Saquon probably gets those yards. I didn't use them in any props. I just kind of thought, let's see the first year and kind of see how the offensive line comes together for them and see how they block for him. But if you push me, I would take over by a tad.
Okay, so let's think about a same game parlay here. We've just talked about the Eagles money line or the spread at -7.5. We've talked about AJ Brown's prop. We've talked about Dak's prop, and we've talked about um, Saquon Barkley's prop. So, are you the kind of guy who just takes all those at what they're giving out in terms of -110, -115, -125, somewhere in there, or do you buy down the points or buy up the points when you're doing parlays? Do you hedge a little bit when you're putting
Yeah,
those legs in?
I do it both ways. The only real, straight hedges I do are, if I have a weak last leg or something, I may look to, hedge a little bit the other way. I mean, I always want to make a profit. Making money is why we do this. But as far as like same game parlays, I rarely ever use more than one or two different in the same game. Like I like to take like my biggest one I put out this year. I'll just give it out to everyone. Is I took AJ Brown over 71 and a half. The one I love the most coming in week one is Jaden Daniels rushing over 43.5. I absolutely love that against the Giants. Their run defense was terrible last year. I don't think it's much better.
We're going to
Joe
talk about
Burrow's
that
good.
game next, so we'll get in there.
Yeah, Joe Burrow's going to have, I think, a
We got that
huge,
game too. That's coming
yeah, a
up.
huge over 263.5.
All right, so maybe we should we should probably hold the parlays, man, for the end of the show, then, man.
Okay.
So after we get through these games, sorry,
I was going to give a little treat out. I was going to give a little treat out because I know all my big clients are locked in.
Would you entertain a -6.5 Philly, over 60 yards for Brown, under 300 for Dak, and over 80 for Saquon? And what do you think? You think that would cash? Like, what do you think the probability of that is cashing?
Like 75, 80%. Yeah,
okay,
I do. So I think the juice is going to kill you on moving some of those that way. So, depending, I'd have to plug it in and see exactly where it comes. But I would agree with all of those. I mean, like, what's the modeling saying?
Right now, this is what we got for you, though. We got AJ Brown. I actually got him going under. I got a 80% probability he goes under his number of 70.5 reception yards. So that's where the AI and the expert capper disagree on this. So we'll check that out next week and see where it came in at. I do agree with Dak under, and I do agree with Saquon over. So that's where the AI stands in terms of that. Let's move on to our next game, shall we? Let's see. What do we got coming up on the slate here? I think the next game we're going to talk about is the Commanders game, which you were just talking about a little bit there, and Jaden Daniels. I mean, he had such a fantastic season. Can he really live up to the hype again? Can he have that second season, or is he going to have that sophomore slump? And then on the flip side, you got Daboll. Is he really the guy to lead the Giants? I mean, I think he's a quality coach, but he hasn't really had a decent quarterback to work with, unless you think Daboll is the one holding Daniel Jones back. I mean, most would agree Daboll's been dealt a pretty bad hand. I mean, what would you say as a poker expert in that analogy?
Well, I mean, he's got to take some responsibility for a lot of the decisions that were made. I mean, Daniel Jones, quarterback, was a disaster inside a disaster. I think he's got a really good rookie, and I hope that their season doesn't force that kid in there. I mean, picking up Russell Wilson, I think, was to prevent that from happening, where they just got to throw Dart in there and say, hey, you got to go win us some games. The problem that I see happening with the Giants this year is Daboll and their GM they're in the hot seat. I mean, if this ends up anywhere near last year, those guys are gone. And so
I don't think Russell Wilson is saving Daboll's job.
Yeah, and I agree with that. That's why I don't think we see him as the coach next year for the Giants, but who am I? I'm not the general manager. And I don't think the general manager is probably going to be the general manager either there. But I think the Giants are going to struggle again this year. They were terrible last year in defense. I like the Commanders. This was like the key game. When the line came out at 6, and I was shocked. And I think you're going to see a lot of late steam on this game. This was one of the key games. When I start stacking, parlays with, I like to find 2 or 3 like great bases and kind of expand them out from there with some games that I don't like as much for lesser amounts. But this is a heavy hit for me. I put my guys on this early, and I said, listen, pound this game. It's a 5-star pick for me. I don't use that a lot. You'll see a lot of 2s, 3s, and 4s because I think if it's, I don't even like to use 1 because if it's 1, I don't really like the game and I'm probably not betting it. But I like Washington. I like Washington a lot here. I think they're a little bit weak in their tight end spot. That I really was hoping they could make a couple of moves there, preseason with some guys. I love their linebacking core. I think Louisville had 8 sacks or something. But I think this game is really going to demonstrate where Jaden Daniels has improved off last year. I mean, a lot of people talk sophomore slump. I think this kid gets better. I watched him at LSU. He's actually from where I grew up, he was a San Bernardino local kid. And so I actually watched him a lot in college, with both teams. And then coming into the NFL, he kind of really blossomed even quicker than I thought. I always thought he had a ton of talent. But, when you come into the NFL, the game's a lot faster. And he's been able to adapt to that. And it's the one, like, I'm not a huge prop better. Let's just, let's put that out there from the start. I'm not a big prop guy. I like to dissect games and say, this is where I have an advantage. This is where I have some angles. This is where I think I can exploit lines. But I did like his rushing over a weak Giants defense at 43 and a half. And the juice was the vig was at plus 100. So I was like, I'm going to hammer this thing heavy. I found that plus 100 at Caesars. So that's kind of like the key game.
Prop in real time in AI. I'm going to check his rushing prop right here in real time and see what we got.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'd like to hear where the models run it, but that one was one that jumped out to me. Like I said, I'm not a big prop player. I like games, but I love Washington. I love Washington this week. It's early. And
we agree.
Is that right?
Washington. We agree on Washington, and we also agree on Jaden Daniels. I had to check that out real quick. We got over 44 and a half. I'm showing let's see, what am I showing? I'm showing a 55% probability he goes over 44 and a half.
Yeah.
I'm showing a 65 over 35. So somewhere between that 35 and 45 is going to be that sweet spot, I think. And we're also showing the Commanders with heavy lines. I think our spreads are -8, -9, somewhere in there in terms of our estimates. Let me double check that here. -6 is definitely the consensus pick here. We got lines all the way to minus 13, -14, just kind of like that Eagles game there. Drivecast showing -9, Blitz Edge -8.5. And our consensus pick is over 9.
Wow. Yeah, I think this is one of those games. Like I should preface this by, I put all my clients and say, listen, early in the year, defenses, offensive, they have to gel together unless like the whole core is the same from the previous year. And so if you come up with a number in your head and according to your bankroll management, I say you lean on that at like 75% of what you have come up with. And this is the first 3 weeks of the season, just because you really, for me, and I know the AI models are data driven, but so am I, even from a personal research standpoint. And I played the game. I mean, I've played sports my whole life from the time, I was a kid, a young kid. And so flow of game is, I think, one of my strengths. Watching a game, like I'm a huge live game player. Props, like I said, props isn't my specialty, but live game is. I can see the flow of a game and kind of see how things are going with defenses. You can do them on paper, but until you see them on the field, it's just kind of like another eye-opening part of handicapping games. And live games, just as an example, that college game yesterday with Florida State, I loved them before. I hammered them before. When they went down 7, I didn't even worry because the way that the touchdown happened, and it just gave me better numbers. And I just started pumping, boom, 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 start hitting it much as I can, just because after seeing the flow of the game, I kind of come up with, hey, we can push this line this way. We can push this line that way. I mean, the casinos and the bookmakers are also doing the same thing. But I think you can exploit the live game if you understand flow, especially in the NFL and of college football. I think you can exploit some of those lines to your advantage.
That's going to be a fantastic topic to get into as we go throughout the year. Maybe we'll do a special spot on live game betting, in-game betting, and what your strategy is, and how you think about the lines, and when do you need to get those bets in? Is it a first half thing? Can you do something? Do you bet in the third quarter, et cetera? We'll get into that as we go along for this year. But right now, I just want to remind you guys that you can get your dream sports ticker right here. All these sports tickers, these odds boards right here at Skybox Sports Network. You can get them right there on Amazon. I mean, 10 years ago when I was looking for a ticker, I had to dream about this thing. I mean, I was envisioning a Bloomberg news ticker, right, on my wall. Like, oh, what if we had live sports scores coming across there, right? Now, all you got to do is go to Amazon, put your Prop Juice code right there in the checkout, get 10% off your dream sports ticker, show off in your man cave. Heck, I think you can even get it for your dorm room. I think it's dorm essentials. Go back to school, Amazon, 10% off. Get your sports ticker for your college kids' dorm room. That would be awesome. Okay, let's get into the next game here. What do you say? The Bengals. What do you think about Burrow's Bengals and all that drama around Trey Hendrickson? What's going to happen with that defense?
I like Cincinnati this year. I mean, naturally they got off to a horrible start last year, and I think they struggled. If Burrow stays healthy, I'm slightly praying on that. I think he's going to really have absolutely huge year. I like what they've done with their offensive scheme. I like that they played him a lot preseason. We got to see a lot. I think that they were worried. They were really trying to figure themselves out as an offense on what they were going to really be focused on, where they could take advantage of certain situations. The tackle positions I think are a lot stronger, and I think they did that on purpose. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it was about Burrow getting hammered last year. I mean, the guy just was getting ate up. The interior lines, the one guy that I wasn't super impressed with was they replaced Kappa and Volson with Fairchild and Patrick, and I don't know how much confidence that inspired. But I think their offensive line is not a ton better than last year, but I think it can perform better than last year. I
As a
think that
unit,
they
you
can.
thinking as you're saying as a
Yeah,
unit, you think as a unit they're
exactly.
going to perform better.
Because I think like the kind of the coach of Cincinnati really likes to play a lot of his starters a lot more in preseason than most. I mean, like most preseason they worry about, let's not get guys banged up and get nicked up. But the way they gelled together, from as a unit on the offensive line, I think is going to help Burrows. The guy is an incredible talent. I mean, he's got a monster arm. He can throw windows that most quarterback most quarterbacks can't. And I think talking about, there's those good quarterbacks. We talked about Dak and Hurts and those guys. And then there's those elite guys. I really believe, Joe Burrows can be one of those elite quarterbacks. I like them a lot in this game. At 6, I think Cleveland is going to struggle this year, again. And
Flacco's leading the helm there, right?
in fact, I think Flacco makes him worse. I mean, listen, I love the guy when he's at Baltimore, but come on, man, he's just not. They need. I mean, I know they're looking and they're trying to develop a young quarterback because the disastrous trades they did with Deshaun Watson. I mean, I think Cincinnati. This is one of my other key games this week. -6 is a gift. I'm going to push this thing, from 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5,
Yeah,
and 10.
the
So I'm going to
AI.
put.
Yeah, the
Go ahead. Yeah.
AI is our consensus pick is let's see what we got here. Yeah, it's 10. We got a model that goes all the way to 20.
It could
um,
get out of hand.
we got an 11, and we got a 7. So six is pretty comfy, I think, in terms of laying the points for the Bengals.
The models and just the different programming that you have and the percentage that you have. I mean, like I've really dug into it more than I ever have. I've had a lot of guys like, how much AI are you using? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just not there. I mean, first of all, I'm just not a technical guy at all, as everyone can probably tell. It was hard enough for me to get all this stuff set up to go. But I think it's super interesting. It's super valuable. I mean, like it will make me re-examine things. From a personal perspective, I look at some of the numbers and the modeling that's run, and then I go, oh, let me take another look. And the opposite side of that as well. Like
Yeah.
I was under AJ Brown, and as was all of your AI modeling for the most part. And then I looked at it a little bit, and I ended up leaning the other way. It's probably a mistake, but I don't spend
No,
a
and that's
ton of
fine. It's
time
cool. AI
because
gets it
property
wrong.
isn't really my
Like you
thing.
get it
Yeah,
wrong sometimes. You get it wrong
for
sometimes. AI
sure.
gets it wrong. We get it wrong. It's just about and I think though, if we're both on board, right? I think that's just strong. I think that's a
It's
stronger pick,
strong.
right?
I think the combination could be absolutely huge. This is going to be super interesting. I mean, certainly you got me to this board, and to even have this. I never thought about branching out from doing what I do privately because I've had a lot of success doing it. But it was so interesting to me, that I was like, I gotta pursue this. I gotta take a look at this because everyone wants to get better. Me especially. I make my guys more money. I make more money.
Okay, yeah. So what do you got on Burrow? I mean, do you think he's going over his number? His number is let's see, it's in the
260, two
two
sixty
sixty
three and a half
range.
is what I
Yeah,
got.
yeah. I
Yeah,
got
I
260.
did.
Yeah.
I did. I took the over on this. It was one that I put on just a 4 leg prop, various games. I think he's going to have a really big game. I think he's going to pick it apart. I think with the receiving core that they have, could be one of the best in the NFL this year if they all stay healthy. You know, returning 4 or 5 starters on the line is going to help them. I'm a strong proponent of Cincinnati in week 1. I'm a strong proponent of Cincinnati for the season.
Awesome. I got Burrow going over too. We got a 78, almost 79% chance that he goes over that 263 yard mark. Okay. How many 30-point games the Bengals have?
9.
Nice. All right, you're crushing the overs on there. Just want to remind everybody that From the Cave, Man versus Machine is sponsored by Prop Juice, AI worth the squeeze. Prop Juice is a full suite AI sports pick app delivering data-driven game picks and prop bets right to your mobile phone or your favorite web browser. Prop Juice can sync your bets across all your multiple sports books, including FanDuel, Caesars, DraftKings, BetMGM. We recommend the top dog of the day and break down multiple models each week, just like you've seen in this podcast. Sign up at propjuice.ai. Get free 14-day trial and lock in a beta test pricing that you can only get right now as an insider right now signing up today. Nobody else. Sign up at propjuice.ai. Prop Juice is AI worth the squeeze. Okay, Brian, so far we've pretty much agreed on a lot of stuff, and I kind of find that interesting that you went independently and did your research. You came to the table. I brought the AI. We're finding out kind of how much we agree and we disagree. What about dogs? We've been talking about a lot of favorites. We've been talking about the Bengals and the Commanders and the Eagles, all pretty heavy favorites this weekend. What about a dog? What kind of dog you got for us?
I like Vegas. I like the Raiders this year. I live here in Vegas, and one thing, I am not a homer. Like yesterday, I had the Lobos heavy against my Michigan Wolverines. So anyway, I got to see them a lot. Their practice facility is a few miles from my house, so I have pretty good access. I got to see him a lot. I love this new back, Ashton Jeanty. I think he's absolutely incredible. Watching him at Boise last year, I was impressed. But small, like actually it was kind of surprising to me. He is a small guy, but he looked a lot smaller even in college. And I thought, the only negative really on him is he too small for the NFL? The guy is a rock. I mean, looking at him, his arms, his chest, his neck. And the one thing that I said, everyone knows he's fast. I think TV doesn't do him justice. He's a lot faster when you see him live. And I love the way the Raiders offensive line and the continuity they had at the end of last year. The only thing I worried about this year, Pete Carroll coming in for AP, and what was going to happen with the different offensive scheme. Geno kind of comes in and Geno brings his own, but Carroll really has not radically changed their offense. I got to see one preseason game live. I mean, I watched them all, but I went to one, the Niner game at the end, and man, I was super impressed. The one thing that impressed me, in addition to the offensive line and Ashton Jeanty, Geno Smith we've talked about this, I think, at length. He's a good NFL quarterback. Doesn't get you in a lot of trouble. Sometimes, when he gets down, he can make some mental mistakes and throw some picks, and that can happen. But he was a lot more, kind of in his self this year. I really saw. But the opposite side of the ball, their defense. I mean, Max is healthy. Max looked like, he was quick. He was speed. There's no lingering knee issues, ankle issues. He looked really, really, really healthy. And a lot of the key pieces they put in on the defense, I think the Raiders, and I know they may surprise people this year. That game against the Pats in week 1 is really going to tell us a lot. I didn't love the game, but at 2.5, I like the Raiders a lot. I used them on some parlays, and I am betting them straight.
How do you think my boy Bowers does in this game, man? Let's go, yeah. Brock Bowers. Go Dogs, baby.
So Brock's a beast, and I think that helps Geno out a lot. I sometimes looked at some of the trades that happened, and they had some player personnel issues, and I think AP just didn't kind of Davante Adams leaving. I mean, there was a lot of key pieces I wish they still had that they don't. But I think the Raiders, I think, are going to surprise a lot of people. Here in Vegas, we look at the Raiders as the visiting team, because when you go to the games, there's 70, 60, 70%, the visiting team fans. But I think the Raiders are one of my surprise teams. Like, I don't bet a lot of season over unders because I think injuries, like it's just not. I like to do it more for fun. Because I think injuries can have a drastic effect. You lose a key
Absolutely.
player and your bet's dead. So it's not sound betting. It's not a long term money maker. But I took the over. I took some big parlays like on some playoff teams and some college football championships and what have you, and some Heisman Trophy. And I kind of like to mix those in for those big $100 for a million type bets just because they're fun to follow and sweat. And usually I end up taking a cash out for a nice sum of money if I get a couple of the legs. But I took the over on the Raiders. It was actually a pretty strong bet for me. I took over 8.5 wins, and I liked it actually a lot, enough for me to bet it pretty substantially for that kind of bet.
Yeah, well, in AI land, it kind of validates my hunch about Gino and Pete spoiling Mike Vrabel's return to New England as the guy now running that show. I got some mixed models actually. We'll put them up here on the screen for you. We got one going the other direction at plus 1.5. I'm sorry, minus 1.8. But we've got what actually puts the Raiders winning that game. So they actually have a chance of winning this game according to our spread predictions. But most of our spreads are right there with you. We're minus 2.5. I'm sorry, plus 2.5 for the Raiders to cover this game. So it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting.
I mean, it's a tough place to play. Like I mean, I could see this going either way. To be totally honest with you, I just was so high on the Raiders this year. I mean, I'm a Falcon fan at heart, so I'm not like a Raider fan at all. So, and like I said, I'm never a homer, man. My gut is usually my last choice when I'm really on a game like this where I'm flipping. And just with what I've saw this year, of course, I have a lot more access to the Raiders than I do anyone else. I got to see a lot from inside. I got to see, how the team's kind of gelling together. And I just think, I took some money line with Raiders. I think it's a nice number. I think, 2.5 3-point games are usually where they end up in a field goal. But I took some spreads and I took some money lines and I put them into some parlays.
Awesome. Well, we might have to use your connections to get some Raiders players on the show here.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of the AI, I'm going to take the Chargers. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to bet against Mahomes. I got the Chargers covering. I got the Chargers winning this game. Actually, I don't know if I'm willing to actually put that bet down, but I'm definitely going to have the Chargers covering this game, and I might actually parlay the Chargers and the Raiders both covering as dogs, and see what that does on a two legger. What do you think about
Yeah.
that? What do you think about the Chargers?
So I looked at this game a lot actually. And from the very get go, and I always try to write down after my first, couple of hours of research. I always kind of just, I write down a prediction. And then after I go and really deep dive and get into it, I kind of, is this where I still am? And, the problem with the Chargers, and, I think Harbaugh coming in there as coach, he's going to build a team. He's going to build it his way. I mean, I think when you have a guy come in and Joey Bosa leaves, I mean, that's a huge void to fill on defense. And with Eber, he gets banged up a lot, but the guy's like, I mean, he won't leave the game. I mean, he'll play limping, like he's just one of those guys. He's not one of these, prima donna guys that, gets a hangnail and he's out. He tries to go, but sometimes it's a detriment too, because he doesn't have the mobility and then he gets hurt and then he's even less mobile. I just really, the one key fact that kept coming back to me is I think Casey's going to have a down year. I know they're returning Super Bowl. They played the Super Bowl last year against Philly, but I think they got exposed in that Super Bowl, and a lot of people were like, shocked. I wasn't at all. They played a weak schedule last year. They should have lost a lot of games that they ended up winning. I mean, some of them were borderline miraculous that they even won.
Yeah, that's what they said about the Patriots back in the day too, though, and they won a lot of close
That's
games.
true, but good players get you to win good games. I get that, but they had some crazy stuff happen last year, as we all know. The receiving core for San Diego, I mean, I love that young kid McConkey. I really do. I think he's
Go Dogs,
quick.
baby. Go Dogs.
Yeah, I think he's quick. I think people underestimated him last year. I think people will not underestimate him this year. But I think the biggest acquisition they got is the running back from Alabama, right? Omarion Hampton. Man,
Mhm.
he looked good in
He did
preseason.
look good in preseason. He was cutting them
Yeah,
up, wasn't
he's fast. He's quick. You know, he's got that burst speed. And believe it or not, they got a fullback, Scott. God, I draw blank. Matlock, right? And I kind of like him a lot. You know, he's able to pick up those blitzes and pick up some of those defenses that got Herbert into a lot of trouble last year, you know, and the year before. So I think that, you know, I think he's learned a little bit more. The problem with the receiving core is they're just thin. I mean, they just don't have a lot of depth to it. And so, you know, it's going to be interesting, you know, especially with some of their defense. But from the very get go, I like the Chargers. I mean, I really did. I mean, it's a big travel game. It's played in Germany or something, right? It's a
Yeah.
travel game. They're both going, and I think it's more a choice of, you know, as I looked at everything, this game was very close to me. You know, like I mean, the line suggests it's close, but I think it's even closer. I mean, I really looked at this as kind of a flip. You know, like it could go one way, it could go the other way. You could never underestimate Mahomes. You know, he's always good. You know, looking at Kelsey, you know, how much is he into it? He's slowing down, obviously. If you looked at him over the last, you know, 2 seasons, really, you've seen him, you know, a regression, you know, twice in a row. But I just really am more negative on KC this year, and I think Chargers is kind of an up and comer. I just think they still have a lot of missing pieces. Don't love the game, but if I have to make a selection, it's definitely the Chargers.
Okay. All right. Well, we got a little bit of agreement there too, folks. I think we agreed on a lot of things today, which is kind of interesting. I
It's
think
actually
we'll.
surprising that as much as we did, you know, I think it was interesting to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Don't forget to get that ticker for your dorm room, your man cave, or your sports pub. Make sure you go to Amazon, put in Prop Juice at checkout, get 10% off your purchase. Wow. So I guess we do agree on a lot, actually. The AI and the expert capper have a lot of agreement. Again, it was pretty interesting. You did your research. We brought the AI and we've come together and we've got these picks. We'll see what happens next week. We only kind of disagree a little bit on the Raiders in terms of points or if the Chargers are going to really win or if the Chiefs can cover or not. Those are really the only places that we kind of disagree. So remember, you can get these data back model driven insights all season long. Sign up at Prop Juice. Prop Juice is AI worth the squeeze. Participate in a 14-day beta trial. Cancel at any time. Come see what Prop Juice has to offer and give us feedback. Come sync all your bets across your favorite books. Track how you perform each week on NFL bet types, player and game picks, and gear up for the NBA because we're coming for that too. That's coming next. PropJuice.ai. AI worth the squeeze. So, guys, we've really enjoyed our time here. Don't forget to get that ticker for your dorm room, your man cave, or your sports pub. You can go to Amazon, put in Prop Juice at checkout, and get 10% off that purchase. Spread the word, like the channel. Come back next week from the cave, man versus machine, Pitt's expert capper. Yours truly, Brian Reinhart, against the Prop Juice AI data back machine. Catch next week episode on Thursday before the kickoff to week 2's games. Can I just say, Brian, this has been a fantastic time. What'd you think? Did you have a good time today?
Absolutely. I mean, it's something super new for me. I'm pretty much just a private guy that goes together and puts together my picks for guys and like never, you know, I never thought I would ever be in a situation where I would do something like this. You know, I was a little nervous doing it, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, for me, it's the data. You know, it's like, how can we get better and make money? You know, I mean, last year was a great NFL season for me. It was an even better college season for me. I don't want to jinx myself, but you know, I think with the AI kind of combination happening, I'm expecting to do better things this year. You know, and that's all good.
Awesome. Human machine teaming brought to you by propjuice.com and expert capper Brian Reinhart. We'll see you next week on the show. For now, until next time, see you later. Thanks again.